Hello again, Hank Miller with the Hank Miller team here up in North Atlanta. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. I'm not that, well, I guess I am that guy, but I'm not that guy right now. So what I want to talk about are the number of cancellations, contracts that have been canceling. It's been beaten to death. The market is shifting. It's not crashing. So let's keep that in perspective. It's an adjustment. It's overdue. It'll be fine. We'll be good. It's just going to be a little bit messy getting through this. One of the things that hit my feed this morning was the percentage of contracts that canceled in June, because we're in the mid-July right now. So looking back 1 month, we'll dive into it right now. All right, so this comes from Redfin. They do have a decent stats side of the house. They looked back last month, June, the number of contracts that were written, the number of contracts that canceled. It's a little bit alarming. 15% of the contracts nationwide in June canceled. In Atlanta, 22%. And just for perspective, that is higher than any time since the pandemic began. Couple of reasons behind there. It's not rocket science. It rarely is with stats. But obviously the first was interest rate increases. Some buyers go through the process of buying a home and they don't lock the rate. They float the rate in the anticipation that it'll go down. Well, there are a ton of interest rate sensitive buyers. So when a little movement happens in rates, it can knock them out of purchasing and force them into rental rolls. A big number of the contracts that canceled were due to interest rate increases. So that's issue number one. Let me back up a minute on the percentages, because unless you know what the parameters are and what's similar or average or the medians are, saying it's 22% is meaningless. So I'm going to check my cheat sheet real quick. So March of 2020, we had a national termination rate of 17.6. That was just as the pandemic was starting to take hold. A lot of people lost it and bailed on purchase contracts. April of 20, that rate was 16.4. So still not where we are now, but again, that was almost completely pandemic related. So nationally, we're at 15%. I don't have the figures for what Atlanta was during that time. But again, Atlanta right now, we always trail in data. Last month in June, 22% of the contracts that were written terminated. Now let's get to the other stuff. All right, so now we understand a little bit better as far as the percentages go. Interest rates were factor one. Factor two is the decrease in competition and the increase in listings. Every spring, every market pretty much gets that increase. So now you had that increase in listings combined with the decrease in buyers, left a hell of a lot more inventory for buyers to consider. They didn't need to have a gun in their mouth and a decision made within 3 seconds. They didn't need to waive all the contingencies and placate the buyer with everything that they wanted. Stay in there a month, go on vacation, blah, 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 blah. No. Now the needle swings back a little bit toward the neutral. I'm not saying crash. Again, it's a correction. It's back to balance. So what are buyers seeing? They're seeing a little bit more inventory, mainly due to the decreased competition. Inventory as a whole always goes up in spring. It always does this. But the main reason right now is just the diminished pressure from buyers because there are just fewer of them. So we're seeing that. That's a release. But we're also seeing the return of contingencies. So contingencies like finance, appraisal, inspection, things like radon, things like termite. And remember, when we look at these contingencies, the overriding one, due diligence, is essentially an option period for that buyer. If the buyer changes their mind and does it during that due diligence period, they can terminate and walk away without any issues. All right, so clarity on that last statement. They can walk away and terminate without any issues, provided, damn mosquito, the contract is properly written. And I have to say that because the amount of agents that have flooded the market in the past 2 years, flooded our industry, is shocking and needless, because most of them are dumber than a box of rocks. And some of them are actually dumb. Most of them just don't have the experience or the drive to learn this business, it'll be fine. They'll be going away very soon. But back to this. The due diligence period, properly written, is essentially an option period. If Billy Buyer decides that he wants to, find another house or changes his mind, whatever, figures out he doesn't like the house, out. And you can get the earnest money back provided you do it within the proper timeframes as outlined in the contract. That's number one. Number two, when you do an inspection, which just about everybody does now that they don't have a gun to their head, when you do the inspection, you can go back to the seller and say, hey, we want you to fix A, B, and C, and D, and whatnot. The seller's not obligated to accept those parameters. They may say, we'll give you A and B, and we're not going to do the rest. And then the buyer comes back. Maybe you try to negotiate again, or maybe you say, hey, you know what? Or else. Seller comes back, or else. All right, I'll call you bluff. All right, terminated. He's gone. So the bottom line on that is you may not be able to reach agreement on inspection items. You may walk into a house, the radon may come back hot, right? Now the seller's asked to do a radon system. They don't want to do it. Out, terminated. So it's any number of things. One of the things we're going to watch, and I did a video on this a little while ago very closely, appraisals. If the appraisal comes in low and there's not a contingency or gap coverage where the buyer agrees to cover it, it goes back to the seller. You guys negotiate, and if you can't come to an agreement, you can terminate through the finance contingency. So the point is, when we go back to normal and these contingencies come back, there are a number of different spots along that process that the contract could be terminated by the buyer if things aren't hashed out. So that's what we're doing. We're getting back to normal. And we're going to see, now I think it's a little bit, 22% is a little bit higher than average, than where it should be. But I think that's just, that's just the interest rate situation that we have going on right now. That'll come back down to normal lanes. But the point is normal, right? That's the overriding word right now. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Again, the key takeaway is it's turbulent right now. I think it's going to be turbulent probably through the 24 elections. So I think we got another year of just, of just a little bit of a white knuckle ride with the economy. I think real estate is just going to move to neutral. We're going to balance. I think rates, 6.5%, 6.25% by year end. That is fine. So I'm not being alarmist. I'll say it again. I am not being alarmist. I am just making sure everybody keeps a finger on the pulse, because you need to know what the market is if you are in this market. And even if you're not in this market, even if you're thinking next year I'll do something, you need to understand how markets move, what the tendencies are, and how to read the tea leaves. And most important, you need to understand that you need to work with professionals. You wouldn't hand some Robin Hood hack kid playing with his phone all the time $500,000 and say, here, invest this for me. At least I hope you wouldn't. So why would you do that with real estate? It's a massive financial commitment, and you need to think it through. It's a contract is a legal binding instrument, and real estate is easy, and to make it look easy takes a lot of work, believe it or not. But when it goes wrong and when it goes bad, it tends to go bad very expensively and very emotionally draining. It can suck the life out of you. So please pay attention to the market, pay attention to the trends, and when you do something, do it with a professional agent. All right.